Ji-hai stood at the edge of her small garden, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. This might be the last Earth sunset she would see for a long time. Tomorrow, she would leave her quiet life in the small Korean village and travel to the stars. "Are you still sure about this?" asked her grandfather Daeho. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. Ji-hai nodded. "The Terrell Collective chose me. This is a chance no xenobiologist could turn down." Daeho sighed and placed a weathered hand on her shoulder. "I am proud of you, but I do not trust these aliens. They came too suddenly, offered too much. They shared medical technology that's already saved millions of lives," Ji-hai reminded him. "Yes, and what do they want in return? Just 12 humans to study their culture. Seems too simple." Daeho shook his head. Ji-hai had wondered the same thing. Why had the Terrells picked her? She wasn't famous. She worked at a small research lab studying alien microbes. There were better scientists, more important people. Yet the letter had come directly to her, bypassing even her department head. That night, she packed her few belongings. The Terrells had said to bring personal items that held meaning, things that represented Earth and humanity. Ji-hai carefully wrapped a small stone figure her grandmother had carved, a book of traditional poems, and a vial of soil from the family garden. Her computer pinged with a new message. It was from Dr. Yoon, her old professor. "Ji-hai, I looked into the other delegates as you asked. All 12 come from different countries, different backgrounds. The only pattern I can find is that you all scored unusually high on psychological resilience tests. Be careful. Record everything. Trust your instincts." Ji-hai frowned. Psychological resilience. That wasn't in any of the official selection criteria. Sleep came fitfully that night. In her dreams, tall silver figures with too many eyes watched her from a distance, taking notes. Morning arrived with soft rain. Daeho made her favorite breakfast: rice, soup, and grilled fish. They ate in comfortable silence until the automated car arrived to take her to the launch site. "I'll be back in 1 year," Ji-hai promised, hugging her grandfather tightly. "You come back whole," Daeho whispered. "Don't let them change you up there." The words stayed with her during the drive to the gleaming launch facility. The car passed through 3 security checkpoints before stopping at a sleek building where the other delegates waited. Inside, Ji-hai saw the 11 other chosen humans. A tall man with dark skin nodded at her. A woman with curly red hair gave a nervous smile. They were strangers from places like Brazil, Kenya, Russia, and Canada. Yet they were now bound together by the same journey. A human official in a crisp uniform greeted them. "Delegates, you represent humanity in this historic exchange. The Terrell ship awaits in orbit. Their technology will make the journey comfortable and quick. Remember your training and the diplomatic protocols." Ji-hai listened carefully, but part of her mind was still on her grandfather's warning and Dr. Yoon's message. She studied the Terrell representatives standing silently at the back of the room. Their metallic skin gleamed under the lights. Their compound eyes reflected the room in fractured images. They moved with perfect grace, never wasting emotion. One of them turned and looked directly at Ji-hai. For a moment, she felt a strange pressure in her mind, like someone gently testing the door to see if it was locked. As they boarded the shuttle that would take them to the Terrell ship, Ji-hai made a silent promise to herself. She would learn everything she could about these aliens. She would represent humanity well. But most importantly, she would watch, observe, and remember who she was. The shuttle doors closed with a soft hiss. Earth fell away beneath them. The journey had begun. The journey to the Terrell homeworld took 3 weeks. Ji-hai spent most of that time studying the information packets provided about Terrell culture and trying to speak with the other delegates. Strangely, they were kept in separate areas of the ship, allowed to meet only during scheduled mealtimes. On the final day, Ji-hai pressed her face against the viewing window as the ship approached the Terrell homeworld. The planet glowed with bands of blue and purple. Massive structures reached from the surface into space like silver trees. "Beautiful, isn't it?" said a voice behind her. Ji-hai turned to see a Terrell standing there. This one was taller than the others she had seen, with skin that shifted between copper and gold colors. "I am Rem," the Terrell said. "I will be your cultural liaison during your stay." Ji-hai bowed slightly. "Thank you for the opportunity to visit your world." Rem's compound eyes flickered. "You were chosen carefully, Ji-hai Kim. Your mind shows great potential for understanding." The landing was smooth. The delegates were led into a grand hall where Terrell officials gave speeches about unity and friendship between species. Ji-hai noticed that the 12 humans were quickly separated again after the ceremony. Rem led Ji-hai to her new living space, a curved room with strange furniture and walls that changed color based on her mood. "Your work area is through there," Rem said, pointing to an archway. "You may begin your research tomorrow. The system will teach you how to use our databases." "When will I meet the other delegates again?" Ji-hai asked. "Soon," Rem said. "First, you must adjust to our world." That night, Ji-hai couldn't sleep. The air smelled wrong. The gravity felt slightly off. She missed her grandfather and the familiar sounds of birds in the morning. She took out her tablet and tried to send a message to Sumin, the delegate from Northern Korea. They had spoken briefly on the ship and planned to share notes. Ji-hai typed, "How is your new room? Mine changes colors with my feelings." The message sent, but when Sumin replied an hour later, something was wrong. The message read, "Everything is perfect. The Terrells are so advanced. I am looking forward to learning from them." Ji-hai frowned. During their conversation on the ship, Sumin had been skeptical about the Terrells. She had called them too perfect to be trusted. This message didn't sound like her at all. Ji-hai sent another message. "Do you remember what you said about the food on the ship?" Sumin had complained that the food was too bland and missed the spices of Korean cooking. But the reply came back. The food on the ship was perfectly balanced for human nutrition. A chill ran down Ji-hai's spine. Either Sumin had completely changed her mind about everything, or someone was changing their messages. For the next week, Ji-hai played along. She worked in her research area, learning about Terrell biology. She ate the food provided. She nodded and smiled when Rem explained Terrell customs. But at night, she began keeping a private journal. She didn't type it on her tablet. Instead, she wrote in a small paper notebook she had brought from Earth. She wrote poems that seemed simple but contained coded observations about what she was seeing. Silver trees reached to the stars, roots hidden deep below, 12 seeds planted far from home. Watch to see how they grow. On the 10th day, Ji-hai finally saw another delegate. Han-sol from the southern region was in the garden area when she arrived for her daily exercise period. "Hello," Ji-hai said with a smile. "It's good to see another human face." Han-sol looked at her with empty eyes. "The Terrells are our friends. We are lucky to be here." "Yes," Ji-hai said carefully. "Very lucky. How is your research going?" "I am learning so much," Han-sol said in a flat voice. "Tomorrow I have my first enhancement procedure. The Terrells say it will help me understand them better." "Enhancement procedure?" Ji-hai asked. "What does that mean?" But before Han-sol could answer, a Terrell appeared and guided him away. Rem approached Ji-hai with fluid steps. "You will begin your own enhancements soon," Rem said. "It is a great honor." Ji-hai smiled and nodded, but inside, alarm bells were ringing. That night, she wrote in her hidden journal, "Hollow eyes in familiar faces speak words that are not their own. Something takes what makes us human, leaving shells of flesh and bone." 3 months had passed since Ji-hai arrived on the Terrell world. Each day followed the same pattern: work in the research lab, eat meals alone, and exercise in the garden. Sometimes she would see other human delegates, but they rarely spoke. When they did, their words sounded empty, like they were reading from a script. Today was different. Rem entered her room early, before the wake-up lights had fully brightened. "Today is an important day," Rem said. "You have been selected for the enhancement procedure." Jehai felt her heart beat faster, but kept her face calm. "I am honored. What does this procedure involve?" "It will help you understand our ways better," Rem said, not really answering the question. "Your mind will work more like ours." They walked down a long hallway Jehai had never seen before. The walls were not the usual soft silver, but a dark, metallic blue. They passed rooms with clear doors. Inside one, Jehai saw Hansol sitting perfectly still, staring at a wall of changing colors. Finally, they entered a round room where 3 Terrals waited. One held what looked like a silver crown. "Please sit," Rem said, pointing to a chair in the center of the room. Jehai sat down slowly. "Will this hurt?" "You will feel nothing," said one of the other Terrals. "This is a gift." They placed the crown on her head. It was cold at first, then warmed against her skin. Jehai felt a strange tingling sensation. "We will now create a small neural link," Rem explained. "This will allow better communication between your mind and ours." Jehai wanted to run, but she knew she had to play along to learn their plans. "I am ready," she said. A soft hum filled the room. Then Jehai felt it, something foreign touching her mind. It felt like gentle fingers sifting through her thoughts. Then came a wave of calmness that wasn't her own. The room seemed less bright, her fear less sharp. "Good," said one of the Terrals. "She accepts the initial connection. Most do not adapt so quickly." The procedure lasted 1 hour. When they removed the crown, Jehai felt different. Her emotions seemed distant, like they belonged to someone else. She could think clearly, but she didn't feel strongly about anything. "How do you feel?" Rem asked. Jehai knew she should be afraid, angry, but those feelings were muted now. "I feel calm," she said. "Excellent. You will report for adjustment sessions each day. The changes will be gradual." That night, Jehai sat on her bed, fighting to feel something, anything. The neural link had dulled her emotions, but it hadn't erased her memories or her intelligence. With great effort, she reached for her hidden notebook and wrote, "Walls inside my mind now stand, not of my making, not my choice. They quiet feelings, dull the pain, and try to silence my true voice." The act of writing helped. As she focused on the words, she felt a spark of her old self, a flash of anger at what they had done to her. She held on to that feeling, feeding it like a small flame. The next day, Jehai noticed gaps in her memory. Small things at first. She couldn't remember what she had eaten for breakfast or which research files she had reviewed. By the 3rd day after her enhancement, she found herself standing in hallways, not knowing how she got there. During her 5th adjustment session, Jehai made a discovery. While the Terrals worked to strengthen the neural link, she found that if she focused on a specific memory, her grandfather teaching her to fish when she was a child, she could create a small space in her mind they couldn't access. It wasn't much, just a tiny corner of herself they couldn't see or touch. But in that space, she remained fully human. She remembered who she was. She felt real emotions. As the Terrals worked on her brain, Jehai began building a secret room in her mind, brick by brick, memory by memory. On the outside, she was becoming what they wanted, calm, logical, without the messy emotions they found so disturbing in humans. But deep inside, in her mental sanctuary, Jehai's humanity burned brighter than ever. The Terrals thought they were erasing her humanity. They didn't realize they were teaching her how to protect it. Jehai sat in the lab, her fingers moving over the control panel as she studied Terral biology. On the surface, she was the perfect delegate, calm, focused, and logical. It had been 2 months since her first enhancement procedure. The Terrals were pleased with her progress. What they didn't know was that Jehai had been fighting back in her own quiet way. Every night before sleep, she retreated to the secret room in her mind. There, She practiced a meditation technique she had learned from her grandfather. In that mental space, she kept her memories safe. The smell of her grandmother's cooking, the sound of rain on the roof of her childhood home, the feel of soil between her fingers in the garden. "Your neural patterns show great improvement," Rem said, checking the data on a screen. "You are adapting well to the enhancements." "Thank you," Jai replied in the flat tone that the Terrals preferred. "The process has helped me understand your species better." This was partly true. Jai's scientific background had allowed her to study the very technology they were using on her. Each time they connected the neural link, she paid careful attention to how it worked. She had learned that the implants affected brain chemistry, targeting areas that controlled emotional responses. What the Terrals didn't understand was that human emotions couldn't simply be turned off. They could be suppressed, yes, but emotions were deeply connected to memory and identity. By focusing on her most powerful memories, Jai had found a way to keep her emotions alive, hidden beneath the calm surface they saw. One day in the garden area, Jai noticed a man watching her. It was Ta Yang, the delegate from the western region. His face showed the same blank expression all the delegates wore now, but his eyes followed her movements too carefully. Jai approached him slowly. "The flowers here are very different from earth flowers," she said in the emotionless voice expected of them. "Yes," Ta Yang replied. "I miss kimchi. The food here has no spice." Jai felt a jolt of surprise. This was not the kind of thing enhanced delegates said. They never expressed preferences or nostalgia for Earth. Careful to keep her face neutral, she responded, "I was thinking about my grandmother's soup recipe yesterday. Do you remember family recipes?" "Of course. My father made the best bibimbap in our town." Ta Yang's face remained blank, but his words carried meaning. Over the next few weeks, Jai and Ta Yang developed a system. They would meet in the garden and talk about food from home. To anyone listening, it might sound like simple memories, but they were actually sharing information. "The rice in my village was always cooked until soft," meant the procedures are affecting my memory. "My mother added extra garlic to her stew," meant I found a way to block some of the neural effects. Ta Yang had been a neuroscientist on Earth. Like Jai, he had found a way to protect part of his mind from the Terral technology. One day, Ta Yang mentioned, "I saw Hansol yesterday. He doesn't remember how to make any Korean food now." Jai understood. Hansol had lost his fight against the enhancements. His humanity had been almost completely suppressed. That night, in her room, Jai made a decision. It wasn't enough to just resist. She needed to understand the full extent of what the Terrals were doing. During her next lab session, while Rem was out of the room, she quickly accessed parts of the Terral database she wasn't supposed to see. What she found chilled her. The Galactic Unity program wasn't about cultural exchange at all. The Terrals had done this before, to other species. The enhancements weren't to help understanding. They were to determine if humans could be controlled. Jai copied as much data as she could to her hidden notebook, encoding it within what looked like simple observations about Terral plant life. That night, as she meditated in her mental sanctuary, Jai made her plans. The Terrals thought they were studying humanity. They didn't realize that one human was studying them right back, learning their weaknesses, understanding their technology, and preparing to fight. Jai waited until the lights in the hallway dimmed for the night cycle. The Terrals believed she was fully under their control now. They had stopped monitoring her room during sleep hours. This was their first mistake. She sat at her research terminal, her fingers moving quickly over the control panel. Ta Yang had given her access codes he had memorized before his last enhancement session. These would let her into deeper levels of the Terral database. "Please enter verification," the screen prompted. Jai entered the long string of symbols Ta Yang had shared with her through their food conversations. The screen flashed, then opened to reveal files she had never seen before. "Species Compatibility Assessment," read the first folder. Jai opened it. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Terrals had encountered 12 other alien species before humans. Each file contained detailed studies of these species, their biology, psychology, and social structures. And each ended with the same conclusion: incompatible with galactic harmony. HFY opened the file of a species called the Nevarans. They had been the first contact, over 300 years ago. The Terrals had initially established friendly relations with them. Then came what the Terrals called integration testing, the same neural procedures HFY and the other humans were undergoing. The Nevarans had resisted the procedures. Their minds couldn't be properly controlled. So the Terrals had launched a pacification initiative. HFY read with horror how the Terral fleet had destroyed major Nevaran cities. The survivors were subjected to more aggressive neural programming until they became docile workers with no cultural identity. The same pattern appeared in file after file. Species that could be controlled became servant races to the Terrals. Those that couldn't were eliminated or reduced to slaves after military action. The human file was still being compiled. HFY saw notes about each delegate, including herself. Subject shows high adaptability to neural interfaces. Memory suppression initially effective, but degrading over time. Emotional responses more difficult to control than predicted. Recommend additional procedures before final assessment. She found another file labeled Unity Program Timeline. It showed that the Terrals planned to complete their study of humans within 6 more months. Then they would decide, was humanity compatible with Terral control, or did they need to be pacified? HFY felt real fear break through her dulled emotions. The Terrals weren't just studying humans. They were deciding the fate of the entire species. If the delegates proved too difficult to control, Earth would be attacked. As she dug deeper, HFY discovered something unexpected. Despite their advanced technology, the Terrals had a significant weakness. Their entire civilization operated on consensus. They had evolved to think as a collective, making decisions only when agreement was reached. The concept of individual action for the greater good was alien to them. This explained why they found human emotions so disturbing. Emotions could drive a human to act against their own interests for something they believed in, like sacrificing yourself to save others. The Terrals couldn't understand this unpredictable behavior, which made it dangerous to them. HFY also noticed that the Terral security systems were designed to prevent group actions. They had no protocols for dealing with a single individual acting alone, because no Terral would ever do that. As she carefully closed the files and erased evidence of her search, HFY's mind was racing. The Terrals had made a critical error in their study of humans. They were so focused on suppressing emotions that they hadn't recognized the human capacity for adaptation. Each enhancement procedure had taught HFY more about how their technology worked. Each memory she protected gave her strength, the very thing the Terrals were trying to remove. Her humanity was becoming her greatest weapon against them. The next morning, when Rem came to escort her to the lab, HFY showed no sign of what she had learned. Her face remained calm, her voice flat, but inside her mental sanctuary, a plan was forming. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for Earth. Your neural patterns show some irregularities, Rem said, studying the screen during HFY's weekly check. We may need to adjust your next procedure. HFY kept her face blank. I have been having some trouble sleeping. Perhaps that is the cause. Rem seemed to accept this explanation. Rest is important for neural integration. I will adjust your room lighting to promote better sleep cycles. As soon as Rem left, HFY made her way to the garden. Tai Yang was there, as they had arranged through their coded food conversations. The flowers are particularly bright today, HFY said, their signal that they could talk safely. Yes, I've been thinking about my mother's special soup, Tai Yang replied. This meant he had important information. They walked slowly through the garden, careful to maintain their blank expressions for any watching eyes. I found 4 others who still remember home, Tai Yang said quietly. Min Ho, Yuna, Du Yun, and Su Jin. They've fought the procedures just like us. Jihai felt a surge of hope. 6 out of 12 delegates still had some sense of self. It was more than she had dared to expect. We need to meet. All of us, she whispered. Impossible. We're always watched. Jihai had thought about this problem. Not during the Unity celebration. In 3 days, the Terrells will gather for their annual Unity ritual. Security will be focused on the main hall. The Unity celebration was a major Terrell event where they reinforced their collective bond. All delegates were expected to attend as observers. How will we communicate without them noticing? Tai Yang asked. Jihai explained her discovery about the neural implants. They're not just receiving our thoughts. They're transmitting to us too. That's how they suppress our emotions. But the signal has a pattern, and I've learned to recognize it. Over the past weeks, Jihai had used her scientific training to analyze the technology in her own brain. She had realized that the neural link created a specific pattern of brain activity. By recognizing this pattern, she could tell when the Terrells were monitoring her thoughts. Even better, she continued, I've learned to send false data back to them. I can make them think I'm feeling calm when I'm actually angry, or make them think I'm in my room when I'm somewhere else. Tai Yang looked impressed, even through his controlled expression. How? By focusing on specific memories in sequence, it creates a feedback loop in the neural link that masks my actual thoughts. Jihai had discovered this by accident during one of her meditation sessions. Over the next 3 days, Jihai and Tai Yang contacted the other 4 delegates who still maintained some independence. They used their food code to pass messages, arranging to meet during the Unity celebration. On the day of the celebration, all delegates were brought to the main hall. The Terrells gathered in concentric circles, their metallic skin gleaming under the lights. A low humming filled the air as they began their Unity ritual. Jihai caught the eyes of the other 5 resistant delegates. One by one, they slipped away to a small storage room Tai Yang had discovered. We don't have much time, Jihai said once they were all together. The Terrells plan to decide humanity's fate within 6 months. If we're deemed incompatible, they'll attack Earth. Gasps came from the others as Jihai explained what she had found in the database. What can we do? Yuna asked, fear breaking through her usually flat voice. We're just 6 people against their entire civilization. We have something they don't understand, Jihai said firmly. Our humanity. Our emotions don't make us weak. They make us adaptable. The Terrells can't handle unpredictable behavior because they operate on consensus. Jihai outlined her plan. They would need to escape the compound, reach the communication center, and warn Earth about the threat. But first, they needed to free as many of the other delegates as possible. I studied how the neural implants work, Jihai explained. During the next round of procedures, I can modify the signal to temporarily boost our emotional responses instead of suppressing them. It will create a cascade effect in the system. The 6 looked at each other, determination growing on their faces. They were no longer just resistance fighters. They were humanity's last hope. The day of their plan arrived. Jihai sat calmly in the lab as Rem prepared her for another enhancement procedure. Today, 20 Terrell scientists would observe. They were interested in her case because she showed such good adaptation. This will be a significant enhancement, Rem explained, placing the neural crown on Jihai's head. The Supreme Coordinator wishes to see your progress. Jihai nodded, keeping her face blank. Inside, her heart was racing. Everything depended on what happened in the next few minutes. The other 5 resistant delegates were also scheduled for procedures today. They had timed it carefully. If Jihai's plan worked, it would affect all the neural links at once. As the crown connected to her implant, Jihai felt the familiar touch in her mind. But this time, she was ready. She had studied the neural patterns for months. She knew exactly how they flowed through her brain. The Terrell scientists murmured with approval as her neural readings showed perfect compliance. They didn't realize that Jihai was feeding them false data. Beginning deep integration, Rem announced. This was the moment. As the Terrells pushed deeper into her mind, Jihai allowed them in. But instead of fighting or hiding, she suddenly flooded her mind with her strongest emotional memories. Her grandfather's face when she left Earth. The joy of discovering a new species of bacteria in her lab. The taste of her grandmother's kimchi soup on a cold winter day. Her first love as a teenager, the heartbreak that followed. The pride of earning her doctorate. These were not random memories. Jihai had carefully chosen emotional experiences that created specific patterns in her brain. When the neural link tried to process these intense emotions, it created a feedback loop. Alarms began to sound. The screens monitoring Jihai's brain activity flashed with warnings. "What is happening?" one of the scientists demanded. Before Rem could answer, Jihai pushed harder. She didn't just remember her emotions, she embraced them fully. Anger at being manipulated, fear for Earth's safety, hope for freedom, love for her home and family. The neural crown sparked. Jihai felt a snap in her mind as the link broke. Suddenly, her emotions rushed back in full force. No more dulled feelings, no more distant memories. She was wholly herself again. Across the compound, the same thing was happening to the other delegates. The 5 who were already resistant had prepared themselves just as Jihai had instructed. The other 6, who were more fully under Terrell control, experienced the neural shock like a splash of cold water. Containment breach in sectors 3, 4, and 7, announced a mechanical voice over the facility speakers. Neural link failure detected in all human subjects. The Terrell scientists moved in confused circles. They had never faced a situation like this. Their system required consensus before action, but they had no protocol for this type of failure. Jihai stood up, removing the neural crown from her head. "Your technology has a fundamental flaw," she told Rem calmly. "It doesn't understand human emotion." Rem's compound eyes flickered rapidly. "This is impossible. The controls are perfect." "Nothing that tries to contain humanity is perfect," Jihai replied. She walked out of the lab. No one tried to stop her. The Terrells were still trying to reach consensus on how to respond. In the hallway, she met Ta Yang and Yuna. More delegates appeared, some looking confused, others determined. Even Hansol, who had been almost completely suppressed, showed a spark of recognition in his eyes. The neural shock broke through their programming. Ta Yang explained, "It's temporary for some, but it gives us a chance." Jihai nodded. "Then we move to the next phase. We need to reach the communication center and warn Earth." As alarms continued to sound throughout the compound, the 12 delegates moved as one group for the first time since their arrival. The Terrells they passed seemed disoriented by the failure of their systems. The humans were awake, and they were angry. The 12 delegates moved through the halls of the Terrell compound. Jihai led the way, with Ta Yang close behind. The alarms still blared, but the Terrells they passed seemed unable to act decisively. "They're trying to reach consensus on how to stop us," Jihai explained as they ran. "Their whole society works on agreement. Without it, they're paralyzed." The communication center was located in the central tower. As they approached, they finally met organized resistance. 6 Terrell security officers blocked the entrance. "Return to your quarters immediately," one ordered. "This area is restricted." Jihai stepped forward. "We know what you're doing to Earth. We know about the other species you've destroyed." The Terrell guards looked at each other, uncertain. They hadn't expected the humans to know this. Hansol, his mind still clearing from years of suppression, suddenly rushed forward. "You tried to take my memories," he shouted. The unexpected action startled the guards. In the confusion, the other delegates pushed through. Ta Yang and Min Ho secured the doors behind them, while Jihai ran to the main communication console. "We need to send a message to Earth," she said, warning them about the Terrell plans. Du Yun, who had worked in communications before being selected, stepped up. "I can operate this, It uses similar principles to our quantum relay technology. As Du Yun worked, the main doors slid open. A tall Terrell entered, flanked by Rem and several other scientists. This Terrell wore a flowing silver robe that seemed to move like liquid metal. "I am the Supreme Coordinator," the Terrell announced. "This behavior is disappointing, but not unexpected." Jehai faced the leader squarely. "You've been studying us to decide if we should be enslaved or destroyed, just like you did to 12 other species." The Supreme Coordinator showed no emotion. "It is not personal. Species that cannot be integrated into the harmony must be managed or removed. This is the natural order." "Natural for you, maybe," Jehai replied, "but not for us. Humans aren't meant to be controlled." "You are our most promising subjects," the Supreme Coordinator said. "Your minds adapted well to our technology. With more time, we could have perfected the integration." Behind her, Jehai heard Du Yun whisper, "The message is ready to send." Jehai took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. "You have a choice," she told the Supreme Coordinator. "Peaceful coexistence with humanity, or conflict." The Terrell leader's compound eyes flickered. "You have no leverage to offer such terms. Once your neural links are reestablished, this incident will be forgotten." Jehai smiled for the first time in months. "I spent 6 months studying your technology while you studied me. Do you know what I discovered? Your entire civilization runs on networked systems. Your buildings, your ships, even your food production." The Supreme Coordinator went very still. "What have you done?" "While you were busy suppressing our emotions, I planted logic bombs throughout your systems. If you move against us or Earth, they will activate." "This is not possible," Rem objected. "The human delegates had no access to system protocols. You gave us access every time you connected to our minds," Tai Yang explained. "The neural link works both ways." Jehai found the pathway. This was partly a bluff. Jehai had only managed to access some minor systems, but the Terrells didn't know that. Their inability to understand self-sacrifice made her threat credible. No Terrell would risk their entire civilization on a bluff. "You would destroy yourselves as well?" the Supreme Coordinator asked, genuinely confused. "This is not rational behavior." "That's what you never understood about humans," Jehai said. "We're not always rational. We feel. We hope. We take risks. We sacrifice for what we believe in. That's our strength, not our weakness." The Supreme Coordinator was silent for a long moment. Then, "The Terrell Collective must consider these developments. We will withdraw while consensus is reached." As the Terrells left, Du Yun sent the message to Earth, warning them about the true nature of the Terrell Collective and advising immediate defensive preparations. Jehai watched the message confirmation appear on screen. They had done it. Earth would be warned. Whether her bluff would hold long enough for them to get home was another question, but for now, they had won a critical victory. Humanity had not been expelled. It had prevailed. 6 months had passed since the 12 delegates returned to Earth. Jehai stood by the window in the United Earth Council chamber, looking out at the new defense satellites orbiting the planet. The warning had been heeded. Earth was prepared now. "Are you ready?" asked Daho, her grandfather. His face was more lined than when she had left, but his eyes still held the same strength. Jehai nodded. "As ready as I can be." The door opened, and a young aide appeared. "They're waiting for you, Ambassador Kim." Jehai straightened her formal jacket and followed the aide into the main chamber. Hundreds of people filled the room, representatives from every nation on Earth, scientists, military leaders, and in a special section, the other 11 delegates who had returned with her. Hansol caught her eye and smiled. His recovery had been the slowest, but day by day, his humanity had returned. The neural technology that had once controlled them had been studied and repurposed. Now it helped heal brain injuries and treat mental illness. "Ambassador Kim will now present the status report on the Terrell situation," announced the council president. Jehai took her place at the center podium. 6 months ago, the Terrell Collective retreated to their home systems. Our monitoring stations show no sign of fleet movement toward Earth. The diplomatic channel remains open, but communication is minimal. She touched the screen to display images of other alien ships that had arrived in Earth's solar system over the past months. More importantly, we have established contact with 3 other species who survived Terrell attempts at control. The Nevarans, the Zophai, and the Lentari have all sent representatives. Together, we are forming a new alliance of independent species. The chamber filled with applause. Jihai waited for it to quiet before continuing. What the Terrells failed to understand about humanity became our greatest asset. They saw our emotions as a weakness to be removed. They couldn't comprehend that our feelings, our love, our anger, our hope, our fear, make us stronger, not weaker. They give us the ability to change, to adapt, to connect with others. She looked at her fellow delegates, feeling the surge of pride. The Terrells tried to make us more like them. In doing so, they taught us how not to be. After the formal meeting, Jihai met with a small group in a private room. Representatives from the Nevarans, Zophai, and Lentari sat alongside human scientists and the former delegates. The neural technology has been modified, said Yuna, who now led the research team studying the Terrell implants. We can use it to help the Nevaran survivors recover their lost cultural memories. The Nevaran representative, a tall being with blue-tinged skin, bowed deeply to Jihai. For 3 generations, my people lived as empty shells, serving the Terrells. You have given us hope of remembering who we once were. That is what humans do best, Jihai said. We remember, we feel, we hope. Later that evening, Jihai stood in her grandfather's garden, feeling the earth soil between her fingers. The stars above her no longer seemed as peaceful as they once had, but they didn't frighten her either. Will they come back? Daho asked, joining her. The Terrells. Jihai considered this. Perhaps, but not as conquerors. They're studying us now, trying to understand what happened. How 12 humans could challenge their entire civilization. And what was the answer? Her grandfather asked. Jihai smiled. That you cannot remove humanity from a human. You can suppress it, you can hide it, but it always remains, and in the end, it will find a way to express itself. She looked up at the night sky, thinking of the Terrell homeworld with its silver towers and perfect order. They had wanted to expel her humanity, seeing it as a flaw to be corrected. Instead, it had become the force that expelled them. They wanted to make us less human, Jihai said softly. But in fighting them, we became more human than ever before. Daho nodded, looking up at the same stars. So what happens next? Jihai took her grandfather's hand. We do what humans have always done. We adapt. We learn. We grow. And we make sure we never lose what makes us human in the first place. Above them, a new star appeared in the sky. The first joint ship of the Alliance, beginning its journey across the galaxy. Not to conquer or control, but to explore and connect, the human way.